Welcome to Virtual Vibecheckup, where we dive into a topic each month to discuss my thoughts. Last year, I purchased a lot of new board games and discovered my passion for a particular genre known as deck builders. Because of this, I went on a journey where I explored this and similar genres, and I think I've come up with an idea of my own. I'm your host, Elijah, and today I have a lot to share with you. Last winter, I walked into my local Barnes & Noble and was greeted with one of the most beautiful sights in human history, shelves of board games, all at a 50% discount. My siblings and I sat there strategizing about what to buy in order to maximize our shelf space. After much deliberation, we walked out with several new games, one of which directly inspired this video. I'll talk about two of these in particular, Star Realms, my main inspiration, and Wingspan, and then we'll come up with a new game idea. Star Realms and Wingspan are in two separate but adjacent genres, except I guess one is sort of like a subgenre of the other, but they're generally considered distinct. Wingspan is considered to be an engine building game, where you start out with small turns with smaller rewards and build up towards higher value turns. In Wingspan, for example, collecting food at the start of the game only gives you one food token, but by the end of the game, collecting food will give you 3 or 4 food tokens, with the possibility of collecting assorted victory points and card draw, depending on which birds you invested in. Another great example of an engine building game has got to be Splendor. This is what most people think about when they think of an engine builder. At the very start of the game, you'll only be able to purchase Tier 1 mines, which are worth no victory points. But by strategizing based on the color of gems desired in the market and by the nobles, you can buy the most expensive buildings and make several points in a turn. Keep in mind that engine building may present as a supportive mechanic in other genres. Catan comes to mind, since your empire settlements contribute to your resource production, and therefore engine over time. Deck builders, on the other hand, are a sort of subgenre, but they have a major difference, that being how the engine is built and used. In a game like Splendor, each mine you purchase is essentially a permanent discount, a permanent upgrade for future purchases of that color. In a game like Star Realms, however, your engine is a personal deck of cards that might or might not give you what you want on a given turn. This changes how the game is played massively. In a normal engine builder, taking something because it is extraordinarily cheap is a valid way to spend a turn that you would otherwise waste doing nothing. In deck builders, however, a bloated deck can spell disaster if your opponent is more efficient. These games are also notable for having cards that actually destroy your engine through the ability to banish your own cards permanently. However, this paradoxically actually makes your deck a lot better, because you'll be able to draw into the things that you really want, your high value cards, much more frequently. Now, with these two ideas in mind, I've come up with a neat idea to combine one of my favorite regular card games, Plants vs. Zombies Heroes, with my favorite deck builder, Star Realms. Plants vs. Zombies Heroes is a collectible card game, sort of like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering, but its main difference is that the field of play is limited to 5 lanes. This means that where you play a card matters a lot. If you play your minion on the ground, you may need to contend with a damaging environment from the other player. Conversely, if you play that same minion on the heights, you gain its effect but become vulnerable to other cards strong in that lane. Some cards also synergize with each other, but the lane that you play each might matter a lot. For example, you'd want to play a card that doubles the damage of your cards to be as far right as possible in order to maximize the rounds of combat it survives in. The result of this is a prototype game I've played with my brother a few times, Blob Realms. Blob Realms is a game that plays a bit like Plants vs. Zombies Heroes, and it also plays a little bit from Star Realms. And it also uses characters from the game I'm currently developing, Blob Ball. The game has 3 phases during a player's turn. You can play minions and items, the enemy player can play their items, and the combat phase. During the play phase, the players gain gold to spend in the blob shop. The blob shop has 3 different types of cards. You have your blobs, which are playable minions that do damage to opponents in their lane. You have your items, which are cards that can be played during your turn, or you can play these items after your opponent has finished their turn and is about to begin combat. And structures, which you can play in the lane to permanently buff blobs that you play there. Items are especially cool because you can use it to disrupt the entire lane or play. One of my favorite cards actually is the Spire, and when it's played, you use it to essentially bounce a card back into your opponent's hand. And because of the way that the card draw works, you can prevent them from drawing additional cards. Because they'll have it forced back into their hand and they won't be able to continue cycling through the deck as quickly. Certain structures have buffs and they tend to be aligned with a particular faction. Like some blobs are professionals and some are elementals. And you can bounce and destroy those as well. Now, my brother and I, we ended up playtesting this game, and we ended up finding some fatal flaws that might cause the game to be reworked or possibly scrapped. Central to Blob Realms is the combat system. There are 2 important mechanics. You can play multiple blobs in the same location, provided that the sum of the blob's gold cost does not exceed the weight limit of that lane. This allows you to have a blob protecting another blob in front of it, or you can have multiple blobs in front of each other to essentially take the counterattack damage. The second special quirk of the combat system is essentially this impact status effect. Essentially, if the attack of the blobs in your lane exceeds the health of the enemy minions, you'll punch through the minions and attack your opponent's face for whatever the leftover damage amount is. So if I have 10 attack in one lane and the enemy has an 8 health blob, that means that I do 8 damage to that blob and 2 damage to their face. This is extremely important, and it helps people decide which blobs they want to put in front, which ones they want to put behind. However, one unintended side effect was that people would usually just stack multiple blobs in one lane, and so instead of the game being played across 5 lanes, which is the intention, people would only play in 1 or 2. So you have one lane where you put all of your attackers, and another lane where you have your essentially buffers or debuffing cards, which act over time. So we tried to come up with a few solutions. We adjusted the weights and stats of certain cards, added passive bonuses to certain lanes, and we even tried removing structures from the game. Adjusting the weights of the cards is kind of a band-aid solution. You can increase the weight of the cards as much as you like, but unless every card is worth the same amount, you'll have a lot of problems. Plants vs. Zombies Heroes kind of did away with this by forcing you to only stack if you have the team-up effect, right? And only the plants on the Plants vs. Zombies can use team-up cards, and I'm pretty sure that a few classes don't have that many team-ups. I think, yeah, there is a class that doesn't have team-ups. So another issue is that the structures that we came up with, they generally weren't that interesting to play with. And in general, if you have a structure set up in a particular lane, such as the lightning rod structure, the momentum that you gain is insurmountable, and the enemy will never be able to draw a structure of their own. Because this is a game with a 60-card deck, as of the time of writing, and there are only about 6 structures in the whole game. And it's pretty interesting that you'll never be able to get that structure because you'll generally only see 1 or 2 structures put into the shop before the end of the game. And the final thing we thought about was adding passive bonuses to certain lanes. So adding passive bonuses includes removing, or actually you have a bonus such as getting additional gold if you have blobs at the start of the turn. You can get free items in a different lane, so you'll be able to just search through the shop's deck and pick out the first item that you find. And you could even have a healing effect where blobs in that lane would heal over time, or would heal your face over time if you have blobs. The issue is, what usually happens is that people would mostly invest their time and efforts into the gold lane, because that way you could get a lot of the really powerful blobs, such as I think one of the strongest blobs is actually Water Blob. And the reason why Water Blob was the strongest card is that when you play the card, you can nerf an enemy blob, and every turn it survives, you can nerf an enemy blob again, but for slightly less value. These effects kind of stack and make the game pretty stalematy, or maybe not stalematy. It just makes it difficult for the side that gets set up second. Overall, I think that the prototype was fun, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping it to be. I think that the game would need some major reworks to the combat system, maybe a genre shift, because I like the theme and I like some of the cards, but I think that the mechanics surrounding them need a lot of work. I especially want to eliminate minion stacking on particular lanes, and I would like to increase the hand size as well. I want everyone to remember, though, that paper prototyping can help to save a lot of time. All this time that I spent paper prototyping could have made much less of a game by programming in Python. And I'm very glad I didn't invest days of my time making this game, because I only had to spend a few hours making this prototype and writing up the rules. Welcome to the end of the video. I'm glad that you stuck with me all the way through. Be sure to check out our live streams, which are now happening twice a month, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you won't miss them.